something.
Oh, it's so wide.
It's so wide, right? In the middle of this interview, he said, so do you guys think it would be possible to, bring the camera back?
What?
And I said, oops, we have to deliver next week. I think it took 3 years until that thing worked.
Oh, it worked? You know what it reminds me of? Fiat Multipla.
If the Rolling Stones would go on tour again. So it's like Stanley Kubrick used this camera.
We're all crazy. Oh, those hand-painted photographs. I'm dying.
At the moment, things are going fine, but you never know.
Hi guys, I'm Lena. Welcome to my all analog photography channel. I am currently in the studio of the Silvergrain Classics magazine near Frankfurt in the city of Bad Nauheim. And it's horribly hot here, but we've also got a really hot topic to discuss. In my hands, I'm holding the prototype parts of the future Widelux camera. And I'm gonna talk with the editors of Silvergrain Classics International magazine about analog photography, who also recently dived into camera manufacturing. And yes, those parts fully made in Germany. How did this all happen? Let's find it out. Here we are in the Silvergrain Classics studio, but right now we're not going to be talking as much about the magazine, but what came out of it, which is a crazy story in itself. How did you guys go from publishing a magazine, which is already a pretty big endeavor, to actually making a camera?
Yeah, well, it all started with the first interview that we had with Jeff Bridges. And we couldn't believe it, actually. Yeah. Just in the middle of this interview, kind of just at a random pause, he said, so do you guys think it would be possible to, bring the camera back? And we just laughed.
Yeah, we just thought it's one of these typical stories. And you have to see that you're still under the impression, well, we're talking about an Oscar-winning actor, and I'm a big fan, also since King Kong. So it's just like when I was 7.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, exactly. So I couldn't even believe, what is he saying? It's like...
Yeah. Is he serious?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So you took it as a half joke, but you still kind of took it serious enough.
I haven't even got it. And I just thought, okay, he's just making a joke, one of these kind of like...
At the end of the interview, and he came back to us again and he said, so what do you think? Do you think we can bring the camera back? And we were like, wait, you must be serious. Okay, well, no idea, but we could look into it.
We could ask.
Yeah.
But we even didn't take it that 100% serious. I mean, it's like sometimes you're sitting in a pub, you're chatting. It would be nice if things are that, if the Rolling Stones would go on tour again. So it's like, and something like that, or the Beatles. And then suddenly they called again, or at least one of his assistants asked, how's the progress?
What?
Yeah, and that was days later. I said, I think he means it really serious. And I just said, okay. Yeah.
So you guys must have looked very professional.
In that moment, yes.
Yes, we were trying to pull it out of a hat, basically.
Yes.
But fortunately, we do live near quite a lot of the camera manufacturing centers here in Germany, which is obviously one of the countries that still has camera manufacturing at all.
Right.
So it wasn't that difficult. Well, you already had a lot of contacts in the industry, so we started asking around.
Especially around Wetzlar, there is, for example, like companies like Jürgen Heiland. Nearly 80% of the parts he needed for his big enlarger were company suppliers in a surrounding area of 30 kilometers maximum.
What?
So that means everything around Wetzlar, they are suppliers for generations for Leica, for example. There are so many companies that are doing high-end products. So that definitely needed some kind of high-end application. And we are still in Germany in the lucky situation that we have enough industry to do that. I hope it keeps like that.
You were the right people to ask.
It just happened to work out that way.
Yeah, we were at the right place. That is kind of like
Jeff
that.
always says he feels like the universe wanted this camera to happen. Yes. And we are just the ones who are kind of facilitating it coming back to life.
Yes.
The universe wants this camera to come back.
Well, it does sound like it because he randomly asked you and you guys are here around all the camera manufacturers.
Yes.
So, I mean, it does make sense. And now you're as far as this. How long did it take you to get here?
2.5 years, I think, a little bit more longer than 2.5 years, because there were also ups and downs. And then there's, like with every project, you just say, okay, first it sounds easy, or at least it sounds doable. And then
You're like, no.
and then there are other things which are not really technical sometimes, and then you just have to say you have to found a company and all that stuff.
And there was also a period, I think people who know Jeff a little bit know that he was very, very ill. He had cancer and COVID at the same time. And
That's a powerful combination.
yes, he was actually near death, and he's very, very happy that he's recovered so well.
But we always got that feedback, guys, still going on, keep going. And there was always a very good communication and a very clear communication. That was one of the things that what helped also for us, and what was encouraging was that this enthusiasm that was on the other side of the pond, it's like that you just noticed, okay, they are just burning for that idea. And
Jeff and his wife.
yeah, the thing is when you talk with them, it's
amazing.
I know we have all these communities where we're sitting and we're just drinking a beer and we're talking about cameras, and then it's like the first time we were talking, it was like he's one of us, It's like a camera.
But he is, because when did he start taking photos with his Widelux?
He had made some photos with the Widelux, but he hadn't owned one. His wife gave him his first Widelux as a wedding present. Isn't that sweet? He saw it first, in high school. He saw somebody using it for class photos in high school. And then the photographer at their wedding was using a Widelux. And and he said to his wife, Susan, he's like, oh, I remember that camera. That was such a cool camera. And that's why she gave him his first Widelux, the one
As a gift.
Yeah, as a gift for their
He
wedding.
still has it.
Yeah.
That's,
pretty sure.
That's the one on the
Yeah,
cover.
well, he has, I think, 8 now.
Out of the 10,000 remaining ones.
Yes, but
Yes.
he says he needs them to make sure he always has at least one that's in proper working condition, because they are a little bit finicky.
Yeah, you have to see that the youngest ones, Widelux stopped to make them around 2000. So if you're lucky, you have a 20-year-old.
Right.
But in general, they are much older.
Right.
And then the construction itself is not so difficult, but because things are turning here, you have to have a smooth turning. Everybody can have, for example, a mechanical watch.
Right.
If your watch is not really serviced correctly, it just doesn't go precise. And it works, but it makes, for example, bandings or bad images. And that's exactly. If it doesn't turn really correctly and smoothly, and then it needs a CLA.
Yeah, so it seems simple, just turn the lens, no shutter.
Yes, exactly.
But actually, and I wanted to actually talk about that part. What makes this camera different from, let's say, an Xpan? Because Xpans are really pretty.
Yeah, they are. The Xpan is, in fact, a 35 millimeter camera in a way on steroids.
Right.
It just has a bigger shutter.
Yeah.
And you have the possibility to use it as a standard camera. You just can close it so that you just have the normal 24-30. Yes, you can. You can switch it to a normal frame, and you can make it bigger. And the shutter is very big. Unfortunately, what you do not have is you have this typical distortion that is coming out of the geometrics from the optics.
Yeah.
And you need a wide angle lens. And now the Widelux does it very clever. Maybe we can open one here. So if you just see, you have a curved film plane. And if you just see that, when you just cut the camera, so this
It goes
barrel,
this.
exactly. And then it's kind of like a scanning bar that just always does one slit. And that slit is in the center of the lens. That is always the highest resolution, so that you don't have big demands on the quality of the lens. So if you have a wide angle lenses are difficult to design.
Very good.
And the thing is that you have no light fall off, you have no distortion, you have no vignetting. All of these things are perfect. Exactly, because you're always in the center. And then the next thing is, if the Widelux it comes very close to our natural way of seeing. When we see more than 90 degrees, we have to turn a little bit like that. So what we're doing is we are creating a circle, and that's what our brain knows. And that's why the Widelux comes closer to that. Now, if you just see the angle is 126 degrees, And in diagonal, it has an angle of 140 degrees. Even with the best 30 millimeter wide angle on an Xpan, you're coming around 90 to 95 degrees. So the panoramic view is much more intensive with this camera. And that is one of the advantages of this type of construction.
So technically the construction of this camera is in a way easier than, like, let's say Hasselblad, because it doesn't have a shutter. And the shutter, I know, is like the most problematic thing to...
Yes,
Yeah.
that is definitely an advantage. What we have here is a very simple construction, or a relatively simple construction, where we have one turning part, which is that barrel that contains the lens. So the only thing what you have to control for the shutter speeds is the rotation speed. And the faster it rotates, the faster that slit goes over the film, and that's taken over the shutter. Now, normal shutters, let's go back to the Hasselblad Xpan, for example, you have a leaf shutter. You have several blades that have to open, and they have mechanical stress. Designing something like that is very complicated, and there were other... Yes, exactly. And then producing this, the camera, camera manufacturing, you are calculating in cents. You have to really have parts so that it's a compatible product. So that means you cannot say, okay, 50 euros, we make a shutter. That is definitely a problematic. And that is unfortunately the range that you had to do in order to make a small production run. We're not talking about 100,000 units anymore. This is the time when companies like Seiko or Compur or whatever, they made millions of shutters. So that was the piece, the unit was maybe 2-3 euros. And putting that into the camera, and you have also to calibrate it, you have to adjust it, you have to get that in the entire mechanism. All these things we do not have with this camera. And that was one of the points where we said, it's doable.
Right.
And then we could go on.
Even if we have to hire more watchmakers than
yes, yes, we are more in the watchmaking part.
Yeah.
We are here really more in the watchmaking part than in the typical camera part. It's like, you see, if you take, for example, if you take motion picture cameras, they are more working like sewing machines. It's a sewing machine technology that is they're used because you have something rotating. Here we have something that should just control the rotation of the barrel. The shutter mechanism in standard cameras, as we know it, it's even more complex. You have a flipping up mirror, you have the advanced lever and all that. And one of the things is what we think makes this camera so interesting, because back then when it was done at the end of the 50s, when Panon made it, till the end of the production, they made only 20,000 units.
And not all of them survived.
Yes, and that means
many of them did,
in 40 years, this little amount means that they must have had maximum 1,000 units per year. And that was like definitely a very manual production cycle. That's what you notice when you just disassemble them.
Yeah.
You never find two who are really 100% identical. There are always someone used a file just to make something fit.
Right.
So it's a very,
If
very...
you have two F8s, it's not, you can't be sure that you can take the parts from one and they'll really exactly fit the parts. No, it's true.
Yeah, you just have to adjust it a little. Yes, they're absolutely. And then you just have to file a little bit or adapt it. Yes, and that makes it a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
Well, but of course you are doing it standardized way that people have.
Yeah, and that is for today's world definitely something.
Oh, it's so wide.
It's so wide, right?
It's so wide.
You don't expect, yeah.
But you have to be careful. You're making selfies of your fingers now.
Yep. You have
like
to.
this.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to hold it like this.
You have to hold it like Jeff does that. That's the correct way.
Yeah. Yes. We have that actually on our tips and tricks page on the website, so you can see how to hold it correctly so you won't have...
So they made here, this area, if you just have your fingers out of this area.
Can have it.
Yeah, and then you'll not get it into the...
You might get your knuckles in there.
Yes, yeah, that's possible. So it's better to keep everything out of this area.
So this...
Yeah, a lot of people get pictures of their fingers first, or their camera bag.
Yeah, which is camera back, which is because the angle is really extreme. So
so you basically have to hold it like this.
yeah, that's the best way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then my finger is in the viewfinder. But I can see like from that angle,
Yes.
both of you guys, and to the end of the room.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's crazy.
Exactly. And that is interesting.
There's something like cinematic about it.
Yes.
know?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's, for example, Stanley Kubrick used this camera on 2001 to check his shots. What they did was they were using especially that film material that they had back then.
Yeah.
They were shooting on 35 millimeter. They just used the motion picture material, put it in, made a photo of the setup, because the aspect ratio is very close to that 70 millimeter aspect ratio that they had in the movie like 2001. There are a lot of pictures also in our magazine where we're just referring to that. Yeah.
Well, we're gonna show some of those pictures, but it's even better to just buy this magazine. and I love how you did this panoramic features horizontally.
Yes, to get much space as
Yes.
possible.
To get more space, otherwise.
Yes, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah,
of
so we have the
course.
entire section there. It's 40 pages are all,
40 pages.
formatted in the panoramic orientation. So that's mine down there.
Wait, let me
That-
see.
In a concert hall, yeah.
You should take more of those. I mean, this is really interesting. Movie sets look really fascinating
Yeah.
with this camera. That's
And that is a nice thing about it too. I mean, it only has 15ths of a second, 250 and
I
125.
have to think.
Well, it just has 3, but you just, especially if you just use a very forgiving film, negative film, for example, let's say in black and white, if you just take, for example, the Adox 100, that is something where you can have a lot of range to
Yeah.
push it,
Yeah.
3-4 stops, or you take something like a very sensitive film, like a Tri-X, which you can push to 3200,
Yeah.
all of that. You don't really need more than 15th of a second. It's kind of like, I just did,
Wait, don't your hands shake if you do 15th? It will all get.
theoretically, yes.
Different, though, with
But
this
if you have to see that when you take a photo with this camera and you just release it, now it starts to photograph, and it takes.
Hands are moving.
It doesn't
Yes.
matter though because
It's only that
doing
slit.
one slit.
Yeah, but for example, the table is gonna be like this.
If you do it extremely like this, then you would see it. But the moment,
You'll get wavy things.
Yes.
Some people really love to do
yes,
that.
that's also
really
a.
fun.
Actually,
Yes.
wavy is-
Yes.
Can creative things, or you can just follow someone and make his arm like a long
Exactly.
thing, so that extend it,
like Mr.
or you can,
Elastic.
or you just compress it.
Yeah.
If it's just a car that goes, for example, against the rotation, then you suddenly have a long stretch limousine suddenly to the length of a Volkswagen Golf or something like that. You know?
Yeah.
That works with that camera, yeah. And that is the thing. And I think that's also what Jeff mentioned, that he loves this time-space continuum photography. You know,
It's funny because his wife is almost exactly the opposite kind of photographer.
It's very classical.
Yes, she's very classical. She likes to have her straight lines. She likes
Yeah.
to line up the shot very carefully and compose it. And if she puts in something that's a little bit bowed, then you know she's done it really thoughtfully.
purpose.
Yes, exactly. She meant to do that. And I think it's really fascinating that the two of them see these different ways of using the camera so creatively, and they're so different from each other. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess that's a secret to a long marriage, is that you're different enough, but also similar enough.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, those hand-painted photographs. I'm
Yeah.
dying.
The hand tinted ones are just
Like
gorgeous.
this,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. She's
Cuba.
yeah. She studied.
Aren't you a
5
fan of
years
Cuba?
before
I think
doing
you're.
I was the, what? I don't know which way to hold it anymore. Yeah, so we were there last year for 2 weeks. I loved it. I loved it. But not those pretty areas. No, we went to the trashiest places.
Yeah, but that's also kind of like a thing, especially if you are doing street photography.
And
With this camera, the thing is that because people are just thinking it's a normal camera,
Right,
if they
and
think it's a
you
camera.
photograph
Exactly.
in front of you.
If I, yes.
photograph, actually, like this, I photograph you.
Exactly, and you don't see that. So that means you get suddenly. I just got really before the Widelux. I used the Horizon because that was the camera I could afford.
I have this one here.
Yeah, it is just behind you here.
Just for comparison, for design comparison, you know? So those were the option of.
Yeah, we also
Lens panorama.
we were. By the way, it was not. It was the Widelux was always the favorite one that Jeff wanted to have, but we were thinking about what is feasible because it's the technology or
Stick fantastic.
yes,
Bubble.
yes, exactly.
I have to say it's, but like this, my fingers are also going to be in the picture.
Yeah, I have to say they made it. You see, you have here especially, and that's one of the things, especially about
Big hands, you can do this.
the Russian design is always very clever, I have to say. So you have to, yeah, but you have to. They're very practical. You have here one.
You have really big hands.
So then you can do that. That's how you hold it. So that is the way how this one works.
Yeah, I like that the viewfinder is in the center, and yeah, this little thing for the finger, so it kind of shows you how. This one just simply tells you don't touch
Yeah,
here.
exactly.
And you're like, where do I touch? And this one gives you like a place for your finger.
Yes.
But I mean, design-wise, you know what it reminds me of? Fiat Multipla.
A bit like this. Yes, you're right. I think that's. I mean, they did that design in the 90s. Before there was another Horizon which was closer to that design.
Yeah.
We have it also in the magazine. We just showed it. We really thought about. We at least investigated the possibility of. At the beginning, it was we want to bring back a swing lens camera.
Right.
So
Whichever.
Yeah, if it's the Widelux, if we would have get.
That's what we were thinking. I think Jeff was always.
Yeah, that's right. But we were
Wanting
really
his
checking
Widelux.
what is possible. We were
Yeah.
checking what is possible, and unfortunately, nothing of this design is available anymore. We contacted the
Not
manufacturer,
unfortunate.
Yeah.
and then there was the German Noblex, which was in the 90s, and I think the Horizon was more adapted. They made that round shape in reaction to the Noblex, because the Noblex is also very round shape
Very bubbly.
and very plastic. That was in the 90s.
Made in Russia, not USSR.
Well, this one was made in the 90s. And the beginning 2000s. I think this one, what is the serial number?
Not everything died in the 90s.
No. They were very successful. They were not that cheap. And they were around.
No, it's very well made.
Yeah, I just don't have the serial number here.
Aesthetics,
But I think they made it till the beginning of the 2000s.
Those guys, their first cameras, they're so cute. They are
Yes.
so cute. You've seen them, right?
Yeah,
Like those
yeah.
120 ones.
Yeah.
Do you have any?
No.
Now, actually, I think of maybe trying to
Getting a
find
120.
If anyone can point me towards. They were not called Widelux, right?
They were also.
Yeah, but at the beginning the name was Panon.
Panon.
But Panon started at the beginning in the 50s with medium format panoramic cameras. The idea back then was more for scientific and architectural photography. And then at the end of the 50s, when that type of photography came into fashion, they started to make the Widelux, which was 35. And then
You see, we have a picture of
the Panon, yeah.
on there. That's.
I saw a prettier one.
Yeah,
Maybe
and
because it wasn't colored.
no, that is the 50s, and then they had later in the 90s, in the 80s, end of 80s,
It's also like
beginning of 90s, a medium format, a new one, which looks kind of like this one on steroids, much bigger. Yeah.
Anyway, I want to find a camera like this. It's called Panon, like Canon, but with a P, and and it's really cute. If you see a cute camera from that brand, please let me know.
Landscape photography is also wonderful. I just
Yeah, I imagine.
I was in 2003. I was making a trip to Jordan. And I had the chance when we were in Wadi Ram. Someone told us in Aqaba there is an old photographer who was the set photographer at Lawrence of Arabia, and the guy was still alive at the time. Agop was his name, and they gave us the address of his photographic store in Aqaba. So we visited him. He was an old man sitting there on the table, and everybody in the store knew him. He said, "Yeah, just go over to him." And he had all these photos of that Lawrence of Arabia movie, the sand dunes, the camels, and everything, and it looked so cinematic. And I fell in love with that. And then the next thing what I did when I came back, I bought a Horizon, the old Horizon from the 70s, from 72, but it didn't work. It's kind of like, that was it. So I had to repair it, and I repaired it, and then there were even light leaks, and I think it took 3 years until that thing worked.
Oh, it worked?
At the end it worked. It was just,
with Soviet cameras, it's however much you repair them. You
yeah.
have to pray every time you take a shot.
At the end it worked, yes.
You got a lucky touch.
Yeah, it would work. Yeah, no, it still works till today. But there were some things, the seals had to be replaced and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you didn't get this camera until
Yeah, when did you get
Quite
this one?
recently.
No, I bought this 2 years ago. It just was after our interview, after we talked with Jeff.
Yeah.
So you were so inspired that you got this camera.
I was searching for it, and they were kind of expensive, but I just made a good deal with this one.
Every time he goes on a late night talk show and shows it, then the prices jump up.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have to wait in between the talk shows.
Yeah. We were just lucky. I was just lucky with this one.
Right now, this project is basically consuming how much of your time? Because I know that this issue took a while.
That was the first delayed one.
Even through all of COVID, we managed to publish on time. We didn't miss any issues and all that. We were so proud. But this one,
This one.
yes.
They even told us the one time the print company said we have no paper. That was during COVID. There was suddenly no paper. Said,
Supply chain.
we don't know where to get paper, and it might be that we can't print. And I said, "Oops, we have to deliver next week." And we all managed that, but this time it didn't work.
You know, different magazines have different philosophies, but for us, we think it's really important to have the text be just as high quality as the images. So to produce a magazine like that is a lot of work.
Yes.
Yeah.
How much work is to produce something like that?
That's a lot of work too. Yeah. I mean, at the moment, it's just, it's a lot of emailing and a lot of Zoom meetings and yeah.
I mean, I just can understand a little bit the guys from Impossible Project, what they had to do. And I also can understand a little bit like what you guys at RDocs are doing. I think
We're all crazy.
challenges are similar. And at the end of the day, it's kind of like, if you're not passionate about it, you should not do it. It's nothing to get rich about. It's like, we just hope that it even pays back.
Zero.
Yeah, that would be, that was something at the moment, it is not even zero. It's more in the other direction. It should be something that's covering itself. And because we believe that analog photography can only survive if people can earn money with it.
Yeah.
And that means the photographers, and it means also the suppliers and the entire chain in there, the manufacturers, the stores, everybody, and that's one of the
things.
things.
Have a good salary.
Yes.
You have to have a good living.
Yes.
And that of course has to cost.
Exactly, and that's kind of like it's a wonderful medium, and that's why we just do it, and because we believe in it. At the moment, things are going fine. But you never know. Exactly. You know, it's like in the last minute, something goes wrong.
Yeah, bumps in the road.
Yes.
But the great thing about having Jeff and Susan as partners is that we know that they are really dependable partners.
Yes.
They are not people who are they're passionate. Exactly. They're not people who are in it to see if they can somehow make a big profit. You know, it's something that they believe in. They want it to happen. So we know that they are really completely behind it. They've already showed that.
Magazine publishing is difficult enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
An analog magazine.
Yes, and we want,
difficult enough.
what is interesting for me, we also do on our website online articles. You are very quickly in making something like that. The moment you have to hand something over to a printing press, you say, okay, if we're going to print now 10,000 issues, and
we should recheck everything.
Yes, please. And also the content, because if it's out, it's out. There are a lot of subjects we do not talk about because we don't want to talk about it, because there is not enough evidence to talk about it. For example, there are a lot of films that are coming out and people are starting with their rumors and everybody gives his 5 cents to it. And that's something like, that is not possible in a print magazine.
Because you want to be timeless.
Yeah,
you want this issue to be valued in 50 years.
Exactly. For us, the quality is very important. And
we just found a new word. It's a book-a-zine.
A book-a-zine.
I think that's actually, it's much more like what we're doing is a book-a-zine.
Yeah.
It's meant to be collected and kept. It's not something that you read and then toss. You know, and so it's important to
I
us
have all
that
my issues lined up.
yeah, well,
Maybe because I write for it.
no, but I also hope that you're just going to continue with all that stuff, and also with the podcast that we're just starting now.
Yeah. It's going to be a more extended podcast with more details about all of this, but I'm super excited about this project, and I really hope that there are less bumps in the road and more highs on the road. So all the best of luck, and I know that you got a lot of support from the analog community.
We noticed that already with the after the launch.
It's already huge. It's already pretty huge. So thank you all guys for supporting this project. It's really valuable for all of us to have something to look forward to in our common analog future.
Yes, exactly.
Yay. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Welcome. Actually, you're having me technically.
Well, yeah. See how
Visiting.
we're having us.
Great.
Pizza time.
Pizza time. Yes.